Now I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, Maura Horton, founder and CEO of MagnaReady. You may have seen her feature story in our magazine, and she's here with us today virtually to talk a little bit about her story, and more information on her expanded bio is in your packet.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Kelly, and thank you for the team. You guys have been wonderful and making this all happen virtually. And I really appreciate all of you coming here today, gathering together. What an exciting day to to be there in person. I wish I could be there as well to feel the energy and to create some of those one-on-one connections and be around all the positivity that I know is being shared. What I love most about these events is the community, the connections, the kinship, and the commonality. We are all here because we have a common thread that somehow binds us. That's either from loving someone with Parkinson's or living with someone with Parkinson's or living with someone with Parkinson's being diagnosed. Although all of our stories are somewhat different in how the first signs may have showed themselves or how they affected us, we do have many similarities in the stories that we share today. And although my story is as unique as yours, I'd like to share a little bit about myself, my husband, our story, and his journey with Parkinson's. I was lucky enough to be married to the love of my life for 24 years, and we were together for 27. My husband was a big guy. He was a 6'5" athletic man who worked out almost every day of his life. That was kind of annoying, to be quite honest with you. By trade, he was a career college football coach, and some would say I was his consummate cheerleader. That continued throughout our marriage, in life, and truthfully, still today. For those of you that may not know a lot about coaching or athletics, first, it's year round. It's not just in the season. Many of us move around in our careers, searching for the best jobs and environment, all while laying a path, a future, and creating some connections so that the older we get, we have another family, if you will, your athletic family, a good root system and foundational systems. Don and I had been married for 9 years before we had our first child. And in 2003, we were blessed to have our first daughter, Libby. And we lived in Boston at that time. Coaches work crazy long hours. Many days during the season, my husband would leave at 5 a.m. and not return until 11 p.m. That's the grind of athletics, win or lose generally. Their schedule leaves little time for your immediate family while you nurture your athletic family and team. In 2009, we were trying to have our second child, and the season was wrapping up. Don seemed to be a little bit more tired than usual from a long and grueling season that was just winding down. He said he was so thankful that he was getting a break in February after recruiting, and he just needed some time to catch up, check in with himself, and get some rest. I noticed he was slowing down a bit, but I thought that could have just been from season exhaustion. It's hard being a relatively new parent too, and also parenting a lot of football players. So I really didn't give it much thought. He had told me that he would get a physical as soon as the season ended, and that he had noticed that the one thing he really loved, which was working out every day, rain or shine, was he was unable to bench press weights like he used to. His arms weren't moving in tandem anymore, and he thought that perhaps he had a pinched nerve from years of playing football. But it didn't seem urgent. I didn't notice it, to be quite honest with you, but the one thing I did notice was Dom was starting to put his right hand in his pocket more often. I didn't think about it at the time, but now it really resonates with me. After the season ended, he did finally schedule that doctor's appointment, and his primary care physician said, "You know, Don, I think you should see a neurologist. I don't think this is a pinched nerve. I think it might be something else." Don scheduled the appointment, in all honesty, with no trepidation. And that's when we first heard the word Parkinson's disease. Like many people, the appointment was short. The neurologist asked him to walk up and down the hall, to tap two fingers together. And then he said, "You have Parkinson's disease." Don came home with a pamphlet, and that pamphlet's cover images were Muhammad Ali and Michael J. Fox. He said, "Don't worry, I scheduled another appointment, a follow up, so we can both see him together." He very much knew my personality was constant questions. And when we both went to the doctor was so positive. It was actually the same doctor who diagnosed Michael J. Fox. And together we asked a lot of questions and listened as much as we could. Although right now I'm not sure I can remember much of what was said except a few key points. One of Don's last questions during our visit was about growing our family. We were still trying to have another child, and he blankly asked the doctor, "Do you think it's something we should put off?" And the doctor adamantly said, "Absolutely not. Keep pressing forward. Complete your family." And in 2007, we were lucky and blessed to have our second daughter, Hadley. He said that of all the diseases, this was his neurologist, that you could be diagnosed with, there will be a cure in your lifetime. That single statement gave us so much hope as we walked out of that office and started living in our new reality of a diagnosis, starting research, and trying to understand how this would affect him, our future together, our children, and his career. Don and I processed the diagnosis very differently. He was super quiet. I was super into finding resources and was Googling everything I possibly could. Mainly, I wanted to understand so that we could learn together um, the progression of the disease and increase positivity into our lives. In fact, within the first month, I had already went to a support group meeting. Don sent me first, though, to be quite honest. He said, "Yeah, you go check it out. And if it's something you think I can do, let me know." Other than that, we were pretty quiet about his diagnosis. We honestly did not talk about it daily to each other. We didn't speak about it publicly. We would say it wasn't going to affect us. We were just going to keep going, keep moving forward, and keep living our lives. As long as we kept moving and exercising every day, we thought his progression would be super slow. That was our plan. Not a very good plan, but that was our plan. There were times we unspokenly knew that others were having a challenging moment, a hard thought or a fear, or the other one of us would just try to flip the switch and try to change the conversation and turn things into a more positive spin. We knew that Don wanted to keep working as long as he could, be the best dad he could possibly be, and keep moving as much as he could. Those were really his three goals. 2 years after his diagnosis, we had a job shift and moved to North Carolina State University. His job there became a little bit more public in North Carolina, and he had to do a little bit more public speaking. As he progressed with his disease, sometimes I could pick up on him being uncomfortable in public places. I would notice that hand in his pocket a little more too. I would also notice he was becoming a little insecure about his speech. He didn't love repeating himself for people or struggling for words. He and I knew his brain was working. There was just a little bit of a delay. But there was one particular moment when we had a groundbreaking point in our relationship where we could not postpone talking about Parkinson's or the progression any longer. North Carolina State was playing the University of Maryland, and they were expected to win the game. And for football coaches, you are hired and fired by your wins and losses. So we needed this win. However, the game did not turn out as expected, and they lost the game. It was a late night televised game, and I remember waiting until Don got home. And when he, excuse me, when he arrived home, he said, "I had a hard day." And I thought in my football world that he was talking about the loss of the game. And I know really what was happening as far as football. So I started asking him why his players made certain play and who made that call. All the things fans do, wives do too. um, and he stopped me. He stopped me dead in my track and then said, "No, Mara, I had a hard day." And I wasn't sure what he was trying to communicate. And the way he was communicating it was so much different than what he had normally said. I could sense there was, a slowness in his voice, a little bit of a fear in his voice, and his tone was totally different. He paused. He said, "No, I was stuck in the locker room. I had to get dressed and to catch the team plane." And again, some of you may or may not know, but coaches and players generally try to get showers so they're not sweaty and smelly on the plane rides home. And he couldn't get dressed. He had been struggling there in the moment, and a player by the name of Russell Wilson went over and helped him get dressed in silence. I asked him what Russell said, and he said he didn't say anything. He just did it. He didn't want to, he goes, Russell was super kind. I don't think he wanted to embarrass me. And we just kind of moved forward. But this was the biggest pause in our life where I thought, our life is changing. The progression is something now that we have to start talking about. And he said, I've done this every day of my life. I know how to button a shirt. I know how to do it. I could see it. I wanted to do it. I was willing myself to do it. But in my head, he had used all the dopamine during that game, had nothing left to get dressed. I was worried about the next time he would be flying, which would be 7 days later, and so I went to bed that night thinking, "How are we gonna handle this next week when he's flying and the same situation happens?" So I did what a lot of us do, which is stayed up at night searching what solutions there would be, what options they were going to be for him and just his new daily routine that we were starting to talk about it. He had mentioned that it had happened before, and, when he was traveling, and it had happened sometimes in a hotel, and he'd have to call down to the concierge to ask him if someone could help him get dressed, and imagine how creepy, the hotel thought at that time, and it just wasn't a reality that I wanted to live in, but when I started Googling stuff, I also saw a reality I didn't wanna live in. There were not many products that were available for him that were of his liking. He was kind of a Brooks Brothers kinda guy. He liked to look nice, he liked to feel good about himself, but I couldn't find anything. The only thing I could find was a shirt with Velcro buttons that was very, very thin. I did overnight it to us, and I handed it to him when he got home from work that night, and I said, "You need to take this on your next trip." He looked at it, held it up, and laughed and said, "You can see right through this." I said, "It's the best that we have right now, and you're just gonna have to try it." He was kind and obliged me, but when he came home, he said, "This is not for me." I still couldn't do it. I had to use both of my hands to press the Velcro together, and it just wasn't gonna be an option. I was still just shook that there wasn't anything out there on the market, but I was bound and determined to find something that was suitable for him. And at that same time, our second daughter was now also learning how to button shirts and clothes and pants and tie her shoes. And we were actually in Target one day because I needed to get an iPad cover to protect our iPad because I had heard it drop one too many times. And what I noticed on the iPad covers was the tiniest magnets attached to stay closed. And I thought, well, why can't I add these to his shirts? You won't be able to see them. You won't be able to feel them. It'll look just like his traditional shirts. So long story short, I did, and it worked. And he was so happy and super excited to see he could do this without any moments of hesitation. And it was kind of like cool technology. So he didn't feel like he was different in any other way. And he just loved having confidence about it. But long story short, the first time he washed it, the magnets corroded because magnets generally don't do well in water. So I had to go back to the drawing board and find some covering that the magnets could be washable. And what I learned during that time of that fail and loss was trying to find a solution for him. I kept searching and searching for button solutions, and all I could see were so many stories of people sharing their frustration Whether that was Parkinson's, whether it was ALS, whether it was arthritis, there was still a common theme for everyone. Everyone wanted to have the dignity and independence to be able to feel good about themselves. I was never going to start a company, but after I figured out how to make it washable, I decided together we should do this. And that's really kind of how MagnaReady was born. We started with one shirt and two colors and sold out. But what I love most about this journey was that we shared on our website that we started with our own personal story and we asked customers to share their story. And boy, did we receive feedback and story after story of, challenges, funny moments, new ideas, but we love sharing our story because we think it opens up to hearing about other stories. But what grounds us and ties us all together is our stories, and hopefully that's what you will all take away today. Today is sharing each other's stories and listening to each other, finding that commonality, understanding really that you're not alone, understanding that when you do feel alone at 2 in the morning and you're lying in bed and can't sleep, perhaps you had a moment of respite and that you can take back something that you felt or seen or heard at some point along your journey. And that goes for everyone, whether you're the one living with Parkinson's or you're loving someone with Parkinson's. It's so important to know that we're not alone. And there are parts of this journey that are super unsettling, but building a community is the one thing I think we can all take away as an essential step in helping us survive and live every day with Parkinson's. My husband was always on a team from the years of 5 years old when he started playing pee wee football all the way to playing in college and then coaching in college. And I hope what we can see is that we are all on a team. We have to be able to live for today. And I know that sounds super trite and easy to do. My husband lost his battle with Parkinson's. Sorry, 10 years from diagnosis to death. And as hard as that's been for us as a family, the most important thing he used to tell us to do is to pick our team. I know it's another athletic analogy, but it's a time in life where you do get to pick your people on your team. You hopefully get to pick your doctor, you get to choose a nurse, you get to choose a social worker. You might pick your support team of people you love or people you met for a moment and come together with a bond. Um, you might not you might also be able to kick people off your team that might not support you in the way that you need it. So you must surround yourself with the people you need during those times. Sometimes the people you need during those times might be a little tough on you too and might say no. And that's both for caregivers and individuals with Parkinson's. But when you look at your team or think about it at night, you just want to make sure that you're all working towards the same goal. And you might get there differently, but the end game is just to love each other and be there for each other. Oftentimes in our marriage, that was there. There was also a silence of unspoken ability to hear each other without saying anything. Upon Don's first diagnosis, it was so essential for us to find a cure, and it will always be that. I will always be our family's mission and drive to do whatever we can to understand, support the cure as we have children and we don't know what holds in their futures, genetics. So that we'll always be working towards that. But what I discovered about 3 to 4 years into it was how vital everyday resources were, how important living in the moment is. Looking for the future cure is important, but we also have to take some time to enjoy the moments that we have and look at the present and find each other and say, what can I do for you today? Or can I help you with that today? And for those of you with Parkinson's, my advice is to be kind to yourself and to keep believing. And for all you caregivers, I know that sometimes it's easy to say and hard to do, but we can't always be everything. But the one thing that MagnaReady taught me to be mostly is it taught me to be creative. And I hope that we can all find comfort in coming together and sharing our creative stories, our creative solutions, and our creative love. So, with that, I hope you all have an amazing day. And I appreciate so much you letting us hear our story.